civil society representatives, youth, Her Majesty, the Queen of Lesotho, who is here with us today, and all people that are present in our session. Welcome, bienvenidos, Untitled. It's a pleasure to have you all here in our session. My name is Alejandra Teleguario. I am a young woman activist for sexual and reproductive health and rights from Quetzaltenango, Guatemala. As me, thousands of people have come from very far places around the globe to discuss the main social problems we have faced, to strengthen our work through alliances among people, and also to make our commitments something real. For those reasons, I want to invite all our speakers to the stage and take their seats, please. Before we start, we will invite our speakers to take their seats. Okay. And before I will start our conversation, I would like to introduce Margaret Mensa Williams, Chairperson of the National Council Namibia, who will share with us some very important remarks related to our conversation. Give it up for her, please.
Thank you very much, our very energetic co-moderator that is here today. I'm very honored to be here today because my journey started 25 years ago in Cairo. It then led to Beijing, and today I'm here in Nairobi. And this is all because of Unfpa, Namibia. I want to give thanks to them. I would like to share with my fellow colleagues here, and I stand on the established protocol, that on this day, we are discussing a very special and yet sensitive topic that needs the attention of every country. Female genital mutilation is a brutal and demeaning process carried out on women as a way to control their sexuality. The reason behind the forced, inhumane activity on women and young girls is done under the pretext of supposedly to ensure virginity before marriage and fidelity after marriage, and to increase male sexual pleasure. If you think about it, all these reasons can be classified as chauvinistic, as they are applied or carried out to pleasure or satisfy men without considering the emotional and physical damage this does to the women and young girls affected. This is an issue that the world can no longer keep silent on. According to Unfpa, female genital mutilation is internationally recognized as a human rights violation. Some 200 million girls and women alive today have undergone FGM. And if current rates persist, an estimated 68 million more will be cut between now and the year 2030. This number will increase rapidly because of the population growth among young girls in 25 countries where FGM is prevalent, and that it's not only worrisome, but very, very scary too. That calls for action from all of us stakeholders to say zero tolerance to FGM. This calls for the protection not only of their bodies, of these young girls and women, but their integrity. This is an action that will cause permanent scars to these women. This violent act is irreparable damages that women's bodies cause, also infertility, as well as inflicting excruciating pain, life-threatening health risk, and emotional trauma that can last a lifetime. I firmly believe in the importance to empower women and girls, especially the underprivileged segment of childless women who are mistreated and discriminated against and are subject for physical and psychological violence in many cultures for not being able to have children and start families. This is not fair, and it has to change. And it had to change yesterday. As lawmakers and women and men who are empowered to create this change, we have to start with strategies that can help. Let me conclude by saying, years back, when Namibia passed the Rape Act, it was men and women, 95% of us are Christians in Namibia. Men were taking all types of Bibles, and they understood it's the way in which women dress that make us to be raped. So just like female genital mutilation, they feel that it is their right for us to be mutilated. And then I put on a see-through top and went into Parliament. As the first vice or deputy speaker at the time, I became speaker afterwards. And I went to sit, luckily the rules only talk about under the knee. And then I sat and I looked at them, they looked at me and they looked away. They looked at me and looked away. And then I got up at the end, I said, I apologize to Namibians, but what I'm doing is for the women and children of Namibia. And I am standing here with a see-through top. If you don't pass this bill by tomorrow, I'll come stark naked. I'm telling you, it worked. The next day, the bill was passed. So sometimes we need to do extraordinary things in order to get action. Let's get action right now. Thank you.
We want to thank Margaret Williams for this important information and this important remarks she has made for all of us. Before we start with our conversation, it's very important to make some reflection about what we have been talking about during all this conference and during everything we have been doing for our work as young activists and also as society members and heads of state. Something very important to see today and to remark is the presence of Gender Minister of Kenya that is here today for us, and we would like to invite her to share some words with us. Give it up for her, please.
Thank you very much. Let me say I'm extremely happy to be here, and you cannot have taken 25 years to come to Nairobi Summit and then we do not see a difference. I'm sure we will stop talking and have the commitment and in particular Kenya has already made a decision by the year 2022 to make significant difference. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you all, and particularly those joining us in the second session of ending harmful practices, making the commitment real. Globally, there are over 200 million women and girls who are alive and having undergone female genital mutilation. Projections also indicate that more than 68 million are at risk of being circumcised by the year 2030 if we do not stop this menace. In Kenya, 23% of girls are married before their 18th birthday, and 4% are married before they are 15 years old. Almost a half, 45% of women aged between 15 and 49 have experienced physical violence since age 15, and 14% of the women aged between 15 and 49 have experienced sexual violence, making the economic burden of gender-based survivors very high. As much as the prevalence has gone down, we recognize that gender-based violence, and in particular female genital mutilation and the child marriage, remain harmful practice that violates the rights and the dignity of women and girls, not only in Kenya, but all over the world, with a negative impact of their physical, mental, and reproductive health, as well as their overall well-being. The government of Kenya has committed to ending harmful practices within a generation. We have put in place institutions, policies, legal framework. Over the years, we have also strengthened capacity of these institutions and allocated budget to support prevention and respond to gender-based violence and harmful cultural practices. We continue to build strategic partnership with the civil society organizations, research and academia, institutions, and the private sector that will ensure we achieve zero gender-based violence and harmful practices by the year 2020 as provided in the Sustainable Development Goals. With accelerated effort, we intend to achieve zero FGM in Kenya by the year 2022. Most notable, in April this year in Kenya, landmark declaration was signed between Government of Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Somalia, and Ethiopia, and a regional cross-border framework that was developed to address cross-border FGM, and that is going to take it to the next level. This will go completely a long way, because it's new, to ensure that we end FGM not only in Kenya, but also across the borders. Last week, we launched what we call the Johari Beans, an initiative which will not only contribute to the ending of FGM, but also economically empower women and girls through the beadwork. This beadwork they are going to sell so that they can generate some income, because we strongly believe when women are economically empowered, their voice of saying no is stronger. This is one of the strategies guided by national policy on eradication of female genital mutilation, which was developed 2019. In conclusion, Your Excellencies, I wish to restate my personal commitment and that of the government of Kenya to end FGM in Kenya by providing the necessary leadership to end the harmful practice within a generation. To implement this commitment, we are undertaking the following. 1, establish a task force that will be multi-sectoral in nature, incorporating relevant government agencies as well as relevant members of the civil society, private sector, and development partners to lead in the implementation of these commitments. 2, develop and operationalize structures within the national policy on eradication of FGM from the national to grassroots to ensure accountability on eradication of these through regular reporting and immediate action right on the ground with a support of the assistant chiefs. 3, provide necessary leadership, including working with the governors of the county and the private sector to ensure the adequate resourcing of the relevant institutions and the program to accelerate the campaign to end FGM and gender-based violence and child marriages in Kenya. 4, put in a framework to end medicalization of FGM by healthcare professionals. 5, engage other governments to ensure we keep on course the fight against these harmful cultural practices, especially along the borders. I thank you for your kind attention.
There's a belief in our community, when you marry off your daughter, a son will be born.
生完一个女儿再生一个儿子就是浪费时间。
A girl may bring shame to the family, while a boy holds the family's name and pride.
Once a girl has her period, she's ready to be married. A girl's place is in marriage, while a boy's place is in school.
Si las niñas no se casan temprano y tienen los niños rápido, se vuelven infértiles.
Les filles qui ne sont pas excisées ne peuvent pas devenir des femmes et être respectables.
If the girl is not cut, she will not find a husband and marry.
الختان بيحمي عفة البنت وشرفها وبيزود إخلاص الست لجوزها.
If a man marries a virgin girl and has sex with her, it can cure his HIV.
Si le clitoris n'est pas excisé, il va continuer à se développer et il va créer des problèmes au mari pendant le sexe.
It is required by religion.
As we could see in the video, there are still many challenges that we need to face to eliminate all the harmful practices that affect us to all women and girls around the globe. There are still many things we need to do, and we need to think in the importance to end all those harmful practices that still being common among communities. It is also important to remark that the presence here of youth, of heads of state, and many people that still making efforts to eliminate these practices is something very meaningful. In my case, I started at the age of 13 to defend and making activism for human rights, but specifically for women's rights, because I see and I have lived different inequalities because of my condition, because being a young woman is not easy in my country. I can say that 9 out of 10 girls have left school due to forced pregnancy and forced marriage. And also, from January to June of 2019, 18,201 cases of girls under 15 years old are mothers right now, and they are living in poor conditions. Also, it's something very important to remark that in Latin America and the Caribbean is still being such a challenge, all these practices, that still being a problem. Every year, 2 million children were born from girls around 15 and 19 years old. And the region has the second highest rate of early pregnancy cases and child marriage. It's something very worrying for us, and especially for being indigenous women, people from the Caribbean that still having not the spaces to raise our voices and to stand up for these problems. And I think these spaces are very, very important to still making alliances and to talk about these topics that still affecting us, and that we can make a change to provide the future generations a better quality of life. It's also well known that this reality is something that it does not have any benefit to us. We know that our system, that one that obligates girls to carry with a pregnancy, to get married and become into something they don't need to be, or even to be a victim of practices that they put their bodies and even their lives in risk. Also, I would like to emphasize something here. Something very, very important is that since 1994, the efforts to eliminate all forms of violence against girls, women, and adolescents in the globe have been very big, but they are not enough. We need to do more effort to eliminate all these practices. It's also the importance to remark the title of our session, that is Ending Harmful Practices, Making the Commitment Real. And not even talking about the heads of state that are with us today, but also for all people that represent the civil society, different organizations, different private or public sector in which we are working on right now, because it's an effort that we all together need to know. This is something very important to remark, the 3 practices in which we are gonna talk today, and some numbers that we would like to share with us today. In child marriage, 650 million girls and women were married before 18, and also 12 million girls will be child brides this year. For female genital mutilation, 68 million girls are at risk by 2030, and in 2019, 4 million girls are in current risk. And in some preference, 15 million female births are missing, and this is why imbalances ratio is still being a challenge around the globe. Now, to continue with the conversation, I would like to do some questions to you. And if the answer is yes, please raise your hand. Who's marching for end gender-based violence here? Who's marching for promote comprehensive sex education in all stages of life? Who's marching for the rights of women and girls around the world? It's something amazing to see that our common fights, our common causes, is something that to be something important. Doesn't matter if we are from Africa, if we are from Latin America, if we are from Asia or other part of the world. We have something in common, and it's the relationship that we have to continue making activism and continue making actions in favor of women and rights around the globe. For that reason, let me introduce you to my partner that will be in charge to lead the conversation today with different people that will share with us the commitments they have with their governments in their countries. Please give it up to Dr. Faith Monk Powell, CEO of Girl Not Brides.
Good afternoon. It's great to see so many of you this afternoon. Before we start the conversation, I would like to acknowledge the presence of Her Majesty Queen of Lesotho, Msanete Mahoto. Welcome, Madam. Welcome, Your Excellency. We are so privileged to have you in the room. And this afternoon, we are moving beyond conversation to commitment. So I'll swiftly move, and the timing of this session is actually reflection of the time we have to end harmful traditional practices. We have very little time to 2030, and we have very little time this afternoon to make our commitment. So please, keep time. Help me to look good. So I'm going to invite the first speaker, and as I invite you, please come up and take your seat. Then we'll have a conversation. Mr. Alexander Siteme, Minister for National Development and Planning, on behalf of His Excellency, the President of Zambia, and Ambassador for the African Union Campaign to End Child Marriage. Dr. Amira El Fadil, Commissioner for Social Affairs, the African Union Commission. Ms. Suhari Potean, Minister for Labor and Social Services, Issues for Republic of Armenia, and on gender-biased sex selection. Welcome. And I also apologize if I don't pronounce your name right, yeah? So don't hold me to it. Ms. Dabasre Chaudhry, Minister for Women and Child Development in India, welcome. Baroness Sag, Parliament at the Secretary of State of Department of International Development, United Kingdom, thank you. And Mrs. Emanuela Deoleu, State Minister for International Cooperation in Italy. So I will join you. We have another session, but I'll join you on the panel so that we can have some intimate conversation. We have 4 minutes, so prepare your session. Each of you will have 4 minutes to tell us what we do. So please, let us keep this going. I have a long list. No one is left behind. We did already. We did leave one behind. Wow. That shows how easy it is to leave people behind. It was intentional. I wanted you to remind me so that no one is left behind. Did I leave anybody else behind? We are good? Okay, we are now going to have a conversation. And this conversation is about commitment. Yes, so I'll be talking to these people to tell me what. You'll hear me, won't you? Let me just stand here so that I can keep on time. Yeah. This is mine. Okay. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Alexander Sitema. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Alexander Sitema. I would like you to tell us, what are the 2 things you have done in Zambia to end harmful traditional practices?
Well, may I begin to say thank you for having me on the panel on behalf of...
Can you hear?
Can you hear? On behalf of His Excellency, the President of Zambia. And I should speak on behalf of my fellow man here, that we have voices for the women around here. You can see that we've got a gender imbalance. but I guess that's okay because we are speaking for the girl child today. I must say, as Zambia, being our president, being the champion for ending child marriages, we've done quite a lot. We've made sure that in our implementation plan, we have made sure that we've integrated our planning and our implementation of ending child marriages into a multi-sectorial thing, whereby we have allowed our Ministry of Education to make sure that they keep the girl child in school. First of all, they have to get the girl child there, and they have to keep the girl child in school. Second of all, we have also mainstreamed our health ministry to make sure that reproductive health is taught to our girls in school. Reproductive health is advanced at every level of education, starting from primary school into secondary school and into tertiary education. We've also mainstreamed our gender ministry. We've also mainstreamed our community development and social ministry so that we can make sure that the girls that get into school stay there by enhancing their feeding programs into school, by making sure that the girl has their menstrual protection inculcated into the solutions that we've put in those interventions.
Thank you. And what has been the hardest thing for you to do, and what are you planning to do as we take the commitments for ICPD?
Well, we have put national strategies. I think we are one of the African countries that have done a national strategy to end child marriage, coupled with an action plan, costed action plan, to make sure that we go through with ending challenge, we go through with ending the challenge. But the one thing that we would want to do is that we should not only promote the putting up of strategies, because it's very easy to write a paper on ending child marriage. It's very easy to put a strategy. It's very easy to put a framework, a law, a policy. But the issue speaks to implementation, implementation, implementation. That is where we are supposed to be getting on, and that's where we're supposed to be pushing forward to make sure that those policies and strategies are sold to the people that are actually involved in the action. We've got our traditional leaders. We've got our counselors, the older women. We've got the people ourselves. And we've got women like you, accomplished women, who we are supposed to make sure that we change their mindsets. Have you gone back to the village to show those young girls that education has been an equalizer for you? Have you gone back to your home village to teach that child to say that it's not all about getting married to a rich, fat man like myself, but that you can go to school and get the equalization that you need? Have you gone back with your curled hair, with your jacket on, and your beautiful car to encourage that girl that you did that not by getting married, but by going to school?
Thank you very much. Thank you. One of the things we have been talking about is putting men and boys into the conversation. So I'm going to be starting with the men and boys so that we make sure that the men really speak to us first. So I'm going to you, and because I forgot you, so I feel guilty a little bit. Mr. Doug Inge, what are some of the things you've been doing to end harmful traditional practices? What are your commitments, and what is the biggest challenge?
So first of all, thank you for pushing myself into this panel, but thank you for your opening remarks. So dear friends, fighting to end harmful practices is about giving women and girls their universal rights back, but it's also about the fight to end extreme poverty. That is how I see it. It's about reaching all the 2030 SDG goals. And we made a lot of progress in our endeavor to end poverty. The number of those living in extreme poverty has been cut from almost 2 billion to less than 1 billion. But the last lap will also be the hardest one, as we see it. And it will demand from us that we reach the weakest of the weak, the most marginalized. And it will demand from us that we actually reach the furthest behind first, and that is why Norway is launching a new strategy against harmful practices, stepping up our efforts, both in our concrete development assistance and also in our normative work. And here in Nairobi, we'll have actually, I think, 5,500 copies just in the stairs here, so probably enough for all of you. We're having this strategy available also in English language. And the strategy will focus on child marriage, FGM, and son preference. For a decade, Norway has been one of the largest contributors to the fight against FGM, and we will continue this work and strengthen it. We are also increasing our efforts against child marriage, and in addition, the strategy adds a new priority to our fight against harmful practices, namely countering the preference for sons and the consequences it leads to, including gender-biased sex selection. So we really want to draw international attention to this issue and contribute to the development of knowledge about what works and why. And we are working closely both with the UN and also civil society. And I really want to thank Unfpa for a long-standing partnership that has yielded great results in this field. And we are also increasing our support to UNICEF and Unfpa and their work against both FGM and child marriage. So we also, from this year on, support UNFPA's global program to prevent son preference and the undervaluing of girls. Last but certainly not least, we maintain our valuable collaboration with a number of civil society organizations. I really think that we need to stand together with a broad number of states across all regions, and I'm determined and hopeful that we will succeed in this.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Absolutely fantastic to hear what the work you're doing. We've been to...
Asked also a question about the most important thing we should do. If I just briefly could say something about it.
Sure.
Because all of us really would wish for a revolution, won't we? If we could find this kind of silver bullet. But we know that isn't there. So this is about steady work, long-term and short-term, about speaking up in assemblies and lending a hand in the villages. And as I already said, I believe that to make a real difference, we must prioritize those who are most vulnerable and marginalized. And to me, working against harmful practices is exactly that, to always stand by women and girls that have their rights stolen from them. We simply cannot stand by and watch 33,000 young girls being married off every day. That means that there are 33,000 new girls being prepared for being married off tomorrow. So this is something that we need to be very clear on, and we cannot tolerate that millions of girls are suffering for FGM every year, and we cannot accept that millions of girls are considered to be of less value than boys, to the extent that they are neglected, subjected to violence, and even murdered. And I think we saw the numbers on the screen. It was like 45 million. I think the last numbers I got from the World Bank is that we are lacking over 135 million girls. And I just came from Nepal, from this area between China and India. And this boy preference, I don't have words. 120 million girls are lacking, and that kind of fuels the whole industry of human trafficking, sending thousands of girls into that kind of harmful industry. So I think this is something that we really, really need to put on the agenda. And that being said, I know that there are many experts here today that can tell us that these issues have to be addressed through a wide range of interventions, ranging from legislations, policies, change of norms, education, general measures for gender equality. So again, there are different contexts, both when it comes to different local and national contexts, but the policies must be adjusted accordingly, and we must be determined, but patient, as change takes time. Thank you.
Determined and patient and persistent. Thank you. We've been to Africa, we've been to Europe, let's go to India. Mrs. Debasri Chaudhry, we'll have 3 minutes conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellencies, dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon to you. Today's meeting offers an invaluable opportunity to review the progress made in realizing the vision set out 25 years ago and analyze the challenges that lie ahead. India ratified the UN Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women in 1993, thereby committing to incorporate the principle of equality of men and women within the legal system and adopt the laws which prohibit discrimination against women. The Government of India considers elimination of all forms of discrimination against women as a key priority issue and has been taken special measures in that direction through various laws, policies and schemes. Beti Bachao Beti Padhao scheme celebrate the girl child, enable her education, was launched by Honorable Prime Minister Modi in January 2015 as a comprehensive program to address the declining child sex ratio and related issues of empowerment of women over a life cycle continuum. India is encouraged by the decline in rates of child marriages. Child marriage violates the right of women to enjoy the highest attainable standard of health and education. India remains committed to working towards elimination of child marriage through awareness generation and strict implementation of the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act 2006. Recognizing the need of address the social evil of dowry, the Dowry Prohibition Act was enacted in 1961. The Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2005 recognizes the right of all women to live free from violence occurring within the private sphere of home. Violence, discrimination and infringement upon rights and dignity of women in any form has to be countered and stopped for true development and growth of any country. We all, as a global community at this Nairobi summit on ICPD 25, must strive to work together towards achieving this goal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I would like to go back home, away from home. I live in the UK, which is my home. So Baroness Sag, the same question. What are we doing about this issue? What's the biggest challenge you are facing as a UK government, or as even a woman who is leading this issue? And what are the commitments you have? Thank you.
So I wanted to highlight two commitments. Good afternoon, first of all, everybody. I wanted to highlight two commitments from the UK. The first is a programme we've been running called What Works to Prevent Violence. And what this has been doing is building up the evidence of the actual actions we can take to end violence. And we started off with quite a small programme working in lots of countries like DRC, South Sudan, Afghanistan, across Asia and across Africa. And it was a really successful programme for us. So I'm really delighted that recently we announced a big extension to that, over 7 years working across the poorest countries and ensuring that we're working in the countries where we're seeing the most violence. And that's a £67 million programme, using the evidence which we've found and kind of scaling it up and making sure that we're taking the actions we know will end violence. And we also want this body of evidence to be a global good for everybody to look to and everybody to be able to use. And the second one I wanted to highlight was our funding commitment and putting our money where our mouth is, which is always really important as donors. And we've recently committed a £50 million commitment to support the Africa-led movement to end FGM. And, you know, we know that Africa's future is its women and its girls, and we need to invest in them to deliver the incredible change we all want to see. And what our £50 million will do is trying to tackle and trying to work with the countries where this is most prevalent. And we want to give direct support to communities and grassroots activists who are trying to change things on the ground. We also want to ensure that we're helping those in country who are advocating to change the law and change the policies which are stopping us eliminating FGM. And then the third one is making sure that we're supporting the doctors and the nurses and the midwives who are going to help end FGM and also help with the aftercare. So the biggest challenge, I think, well, two challenges actually. One of them, this is such a complex issue, we all recognise that. So I think we've got to kind of take these different levels of action. And so that's the first challenge. And the second challenge I find is, making sure that our donor money gets to the people on the ground who are going to be making a difference. And that's what we really want to do with this. Thank you.
Fantastic. I had the privilege of leading the past phase of the ED-FGM program, so I again really acknowledge the support from DFID on behalf of all the stakeholders working on FGM, and thank you for that commitment. I think that is excellent. We'll move again, and Mrs. Emmanuel Delry, I hope I've pronounced it right. Again, the same question.
Italian name.
Yeah, so I won't repeat the question, but please let us know what you're doing and how what commitments you are making.
Well, actually, I'm very happy to see that the Europeans here are very much in line with their policies. Italy is strongly committed, especially to ending for the SDG 5 and the target in particular F5.3. I want to say that our policy is designed on a multi-level strategy, because on one hand we want to promote policies, on the other hand we work very thoroughly on field, on the other hand of course we provide funds through a multi-stakeholder approach, which I think is working quite well, and I think it will be, let's say, the reflection of the concept of holistic approach that we need for the future. The multi-stakeholder approach is, as been said also by my colleagues at this table, and definitely based on the fact that we need governments, but we also need civil society very strongly. We need people on field, we need private sector and others. So this is in general the policy that Italy is trying to put in place, especially in terms of strategy. We are very well aware of the fact that harmful and traditional practices, female genital mutilations and others, obviously have a social effect which is devastating. And considering the trends in the population growth and other elements that have been discussed in this fantastic conference, we must be fully aware that we have to promote proper resolutions. And I want to tell you that we proactively, as Italians, negotiate resolutions adopted by the UN General Assembly and the Human Rights Council. I could tell you which ones, but definitely they are the ones devoted to these particular issues. Not only this, but also I want to tell you that female genital mutilations and also early child and forced marriage are the priorities of Italy's mandate at the Human Rights Council for 2019 to 2021. I am proud to say that we are champions in this, because a great part of our projects is devoted to these particular issues. And obviously we think that in doing so, especially from small projects to the larger framework, we are trying to tackle exactly what it means to change the narrative. And I think that the narrative is something that we have to work on all together very strongly. I just want to tell you that one thing that changed my life, many episodes, but one in particular, when I was working with a group of women victims of human trafficking, and a young Albanian who had been used as a prostitute. We were trying to rehabilitate her, and she was in difficult conditions, of course. At one point, she said to me, I was accepting what was done to me because, having been brought up in a context in which I thought I was worth absolutely nothing, I thought that what was done to me was something that I deserved. This particular sentence changed my life, and this is why I'm so engaged in these particular things, and this is why I'm firmly convinced, and Italy is convinced as well, and I am very pleased to say this, because this is something shared by the public opinion as well, that we have to change the narrative. Women are not only victims in this particular context, but they are social agents. And until we make societies understand this, we will never change the communities, from the smallest to the biggest. So Italy is on the front line. Thank you.
There is a word I like to say, awesome. Italy is on the front line. Thank you. That is awesome. I'm going to ask Ms. Surahi Boyatan the same questions.
It is a great honor for me to share with you our achievements in last few years and the challenges that we are going to overcome. There is a saying in Armenian, when a whole village stands, it breaks the log. In other words, if we stand together, nothing is impossible. I want to tell you a story of successful united work in the name of equality for girls and women. 9 years ago, our partners from Unfpa Armenian country office rang a bell. They had looked at official statistics and found out that starting from early 19th, there was a deviation from the normal ratio of newborn boys and girls, which is 102 to 105 boys to 100 girls. In the early 2000s, it had reached 120 boys to 100 girls, ranking the country third in the world. As studies showed, the reason was prenatal sex selection rooted in some preference and undervaluing of girls. Today, the ratio at the birth in Armenia for the first 6 months of this year, 110 boys to 100 girls, growing down by a percentage point almost each year after 2015. Armenia is now the 5th in the world ranking. This was a result of 9 years of intensive joint work, all the way from identification and thorough research, wide-scale advocacy and communication efforts, alliance building to focusing technical support. The government of Armenia recognized the issue of sex-selective abortion as a national priority and developing and adopted the first national program to tackle prenatal sex selection in 2015. Unfpa helped us build an alliance consisting of government, civil society organization, ombudsman office, faith-based organizations, other international donors, and the media. Through our collective work, the media, a large portion of society, international organizations, the government, the parliament, and the church have become a united team that stands on the way of this harmful practice. With the support of Unfpa, Armenia is successfully fulfilling its international obligations as per the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe Resolution 1829 on prenatal sex selection. The Republic of Armenia has ratified almost all core international acts on human rights, and in particular those related to gender issues. As a member of the UN family and the Council of Europe, and as an independent state tending toward European integration, Armenia has undertaken certain obligation to harmonize national legislation with the provisions of these instruments. Legislation of the Republic of Armenia prohibits gender-based discrimination, and the ongoing national policies and reforms are consistent with the 2030 UN Agenda for Sustainable Development and its goals, and contribute to them, in particular to the realization of the Goal 5 to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. And ladies and gentlemen, in the last spring, the world witnessed historical changes in Armenia, which was in focus on the international audience and the media. Armenians from all over the world were involved in the revolution of peace and love, which led the peaceful transition of government. Women, the majority of whom were young, were the driving force, the revolution, and guardians of the peaceful nature of the whole processes. The new government of Armenia on different occasions has tended its international attention to advance women's political participation in the country and to engage more women in decision-making processes, not only to ensure democracy, but to attain sustainable development in the country and to ensure that women are able to contribute to the fullest of their potential. We recognize that we still have a long way to go to reach equal value of girls and boys and the normal sex at birth ratio, but we are optimistic that when a whole village stands, the log breaks.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So we have been across the world. Why not come back to Africa? Dr. Amira Al-Fadil, again, it's your opportunity to tell us what's happening at the Africa Union and what are some of the things you see as the big challenges for ending harmful traditional practices. Thank you.
For giving me this opportunity. And as I'm speaking on behalf of the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, let me bring his greetings to all of you here. And I will say all protocol observed to Her Majesty and all the ministers here present. And also let me start by saying that the African Union and the 55 member states of the African Union meet twice a year in the summit in Addis Ababa, and the second summit is usually hosted by a member state. The powers of the African Union is in the convening of the 55 heads of states and governments, and it's about the political will, because all what's being said by the previous speakers, and I agree with what had been said, it starts with having the political will, the highest political will in the country, that this political will is the change, is changing the harmful traditional practices we have in Africa. And I can say on behalf of the African Union that this political commitment is there. The political will is there. And it reflects itself in the continental strategies, the continental policies we have in the African Union. It's been adopted, it's been approved on the continental level. Not only that, it goes to the REX level, the regional economic communities, and the regional economic communities are a major player when we want to implement any continental strategy or policy. Then it goes down to the national level when the commitments are really tested, when you want to have a national strategy, a national policy, and thank you when I heard you saying that you already have your strategy in place and you have your policy in place. We in the African Union Commission, what we do is we follow up on this commitment of the heads of states and governments in Africa. We follow up, and not only that, we have developed something called champions. So when we talk about having specific direct programs, we need to follow up on it every year. We need to monitor, we need to evaluate. We take a head of state as the champion. Our champion for gender equality and women empowerment is the president of Ghana. And when we talk about girls' empowerment, it has to start with women empowerment. Political empowerment of women, social empowerment, economic empowerment, because most of what's happening is happening because of poverty. So we have to address the economic empowerment of women. We have to talk about the human rights, and we have to talk about how we can strengthen our women in Africa so we can also strengthen our girls in Africa. When it comes to direct projects or programs, we have two main projects in the African Union that led by the African Union and the partners, all the partners, including Unfpa and UNICEF and many of state countries that are supporting us on this project. We have the ending of child marriage in Africa, which is a very important initiative, and we have Salima campaign when it comes to FGM and how to eliminate FGM in Africa. For the child marriage, we have the president of Zambia as a champion. And this championship, as I mentioned earlier, it is important because it brings to the table of the heads of states every summit a report, a progress report from another head of state. So imagine when head of state is talking to his peers, they will listen, and they will listen very carefully. So we have the president of Zambia, every year he reports to the summit on the progress made on ending of child marriage in Africa. And actually Zambia is a leading country because also they hosted the first girls summit. We have the president of Burkina Faso. He's a champion of ending FGM in Africa. And also with my sister here, we had a very important and successful meeting in Burkina Faso last year, and after that, His Excellency the President was chosen by the summit as a champion for ending FGM in Africa, and he is following up with us in the Department of Social Affairs. We are preparing our reports with our member states, following up on the implementation of what has been agreed upon. So political commitment is there, and the African Union is here to reflect this political commitment.
Thank you so much for your leadership, and really convey that to all members of the African Union. We look to you for leadership here in Africa, and thank you, especially on this issue. We are now going to watch a short video, and then we will go to the political commitments in a minute. Yeah, you can say something as we cue the video.
Okay, don't worry. I just wanted to briefly say, as I don't think I used my time, I spoke to lots of activists from Kenya last night, and they gave me a very clear message of what they wanted to see: more money directly to the grassroots activists, committed, sustainable funding, making sure that the welcome political commitments we see follow through to action on the ground. So thank you for all of those who came, and I just wanted to make sure I used my opportunity on stage to get your message across.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. That's a great contribution. So we watch a video, and I'll sit there so that I can also be in the photograph. What do you think?
Siduxaanaqay dalayalkaadkuy qadata cabinigiya tayinkii salootu gedhaamay aanunni rabe waysaya dalayan barakay salootu magalay
yo macna ille namay salatoon yo qabeeni macna
So South Asia is plagued with something called the sun preference. We calculate that we have about 9,000 girl children missing every day in this country.
قدری خانم کم شده میره در افغانستان که دختر شوه خیلی قدرش پایین شده. علاقه من بودم من خواست خدا نبود. به همون خاطر ما بچگان پوش کرده بودیم. دیگه فقط من خواهیم ادامه بدیم لباسای بچگانه.
لما بدأ الحرب كان عمري 14 سنة. وبعد سنة صار عمري عاد 15 سنة وتجوزت. وما يعني وافقت على هذا الزواج، جبران جبر عليه. لأن كنت طفلة، كنت صغيرة عمري 15 سنة وما ردت هذا الزواج. صار عندي وجع ورحت سويت تحاليل وطلعت حامل. كان عمري 16 سنة لما انحبلت بالثاني.
भने 30 जनाले बाल विवाह आफ्नो रोक्छन् भने त्यो गाउँको जुन सानो केटीहरू हुन्छन् किशोरीहरू तिनीहरू पनि भन्छन् उ दिदी हामी भन्दा ठुलो भइसक्नु भयो उहाँको बिहे भए छैन अहिले हाम्रो किन गरिराख्नु भएको छ भने तिनीहरू पनि सवाल उठाउन सक्छन्
मिलाग كان تبع حبيبي ودي الراعة أنا بيني قبل اليوم بردت وكم ملاقي محاي بارتي كفر معنا ساي بڑا مدي ساي بڑا نغاي بارستا من فڑا رحمي هم فڑا ما دلي بيساعد إسي بريت تايته إسي اللي ضدنا تت بارسان كحي وعد حنو ساي بڑا مدي
Taking the cue from Dr. Amira, we need political commitment for this work. So I'm going to invite Doug because I left you behind, I have to start with you, to give us some commitments
Thank
on
you
this
so much.
issue.
Thank you so much. I think I've said a lot already, but when it comes to financially, that's the answer. Norway will continue to spend 1% of our gross national income as one of the only countries actually that doing that on official development aid. And we have already increased funding to eliminate harmful practices by more than $6 million compared to last year, and bringing it up to approximately 20 million. Thank you. So it's $20 million each year. And this is an important part of the total of $1 billion that we will invest in as our HR health and rights over the next 6 years. So I'm convinced that our combined political and moral will and financial contributions will make a difference for the health and the lives of women and girls. And I think we saw some of the really strong stories about these neglected girls that actually been told that they have no value. Some of them have no identification and actually are married away or sold away and even murdered. So this is something that I'm really passionate about, and I have the whole Norwegian government with me, together with me on that. So thank you.
Thank you. And on behalf of all the women and girls affected by these issues, on behalf of all the stakeholders, please thank you. And also say thank you to your government for supporting this issue. Thank you. And I will do the same to Mrs. Emmanuel. Please give us your commitment as well.
I don't know if it works. No, it does work actually. Well, Italy, again, is in line with this approach. And I just want to tell you that we think globally. We think that this is a global issue that must be approached globally with a number of actors. I want to also mention the diasporas, that for us are very, very important because they are a bridge between countries. And I want to tell you that we are particularly pleased to be here because this is the confirmation that we are going in the right direction. This conference is teaching us a lot. And I want to tell you that we are engaging with all of you while looking at Beijing +20 review process of declaration and platform next year, which is a political commitment. And then I also want to add that as the project between Unfpa and UNICEF has been mentioned, we think that this is very useful to consolidate the effort to change social norms in partner countries. And this is why, because the good results that we are definitely verifying, we are really considering to continue our consistent financial support to this initiative and others, while keeping up our mainstreaming actions at bilateral level, of course, which is quite widespread. We have a huge number of projects, and especially devoted to Africa, but not only. I just tell you that we want to provide more funds, which is very important. We, especially in the field of ending global, at global level, early child and forced marriage. And obviously we are thinking about effective actions and especially finding the effective partners, which is another very important issue. So the whole society is very sensitive and the government is devoted to give funds consistently and substantially as well.
Thank you again. On behalf of the women and girls who are facing all these challenges, I want to say thank you. Please convey our gratitude to your government. And to all of you here, we say thank you for your contribution. You've been a fantastic panel. We are only 3 minutes out. Thank you so much for being amazing, for being wonderful. And we'll stop there, and I'll invite my co-moderator, Alejandra, for the next session, and I'll invite you to take your seats. Thank you.
I would like to thank Faith for this amazing panel, and also to all our speakers, and for all the commitments they have made in all their countries. I think this is something very, very important for all of us here, because this is something very inspirational for all of us, because those are things that we really need to complain about, and this is something that we can make a very important commitment with our own work, and to reproduce these messages, and to also clear and also make these commitments done today with all young people, and to all among the persons and population around our communities, because it's something very, very important to continue making advocacy and to continue making an amazing work for providing girls and women a better quality of life. Right now, we are having a TED Talk, and for that, I would like to call to our stage to Cindy Semura Bernard, an activist from Canada who is working in an international development NGO and women empowerment. Please receive her with an applause.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. All protocols observed. I thought I had 2 weeks to prepare my TED-style talk, and the panel just took all my points, and all the stats have been mentioned. And so I would like to ask if you may allow me to get a little bit vulnerable and just share my story and what led me to be standing in front of you today. So some 16 years ago, I was a young woman who migrated to the United States of America from South Africa, chasing the American dream and love, of course. As a young person, you want to fall in love and you have dreams. A couple of months moving into the United States, I dropped out of college because I couldn't afford it. And I found myself living on the streets of New York. And on the streets of New York, I faced threats of violence, gender-based violence, physical and sexual. And at that time, I had no place to lay my head at night. And as a young person, you often wonder, what else is going to happen? What's next? And I also faced the threats of the risk of being human trafficked because I had no economical empowerment. I faced the risk of being put in prostitutional rings because the men were rich and the men will tell you that you'll get paid lots of money. And at that point, I also faced the issue of having a roof over my head if I agreed to sleep with someone that night, but also the risk of contracting HIV or AIDS or other STIs. So luckily for me, I found out of an opportunity to migrate to Canada as an asylum seeker. So I took the risk. I thought, why not? I've been on the streets, what else could happen? And going back to South Africa was not an option for me because I had lost my father, and my mother was a retired woman living in a high-density suburb. I'd seen some of my family members go through gender-based violence, and so Canada was the idea. But moving into Canada, from the day when I got to Canada, I was accepted by the Immigration and Refugee police. And from that day on, I had a roof over my head for the first time in a few months, and I felt secure. Within 2 months of being in Canada, I had a work permit. I was able to have access to go to school. I had shelter. I had social protection services offered to me. I had a roof over my head, so now I started thinking, what should I do with this opportunity, and how can I use my voice to empower other women around the world? And so my thoughts took me back home because I knew that I had to start at home. It's been 10 years since I started my work. I launched an international development charity organization in Toronto. And our work takes us around 5 Southern African countries to advocate for women and girls' rights. And our mandate is to ensure that there is no girl who is denied access to go to school. That's priority. Because we know that when girls are educated, they'll make different choices as they go up. We thought of women, and we knew that as we go around rural areas, the issues were on poverty, on traditional biases, on harmful practices. And we wanted to tackle the issue of lack of economic empowerment. And so we started working with women in groups around Lesotho, South Africa, Botswana, Zimbabwe, and Swaziland, Eswatini now, on what can we do to remove women from those circles of being violated, mostly by their spouses and the people around them. And this session today is about commitments. And this is a message that I bring from all the hundreds and thousands of women that I've worked with. And now in my capacity working in the office, volunteering with the Youth Envoy, we come across a lot of young people. The message is the same. Girls need to be protected. Women need to be protected. We need economic empowerment. We need men who are the perpetrators to be educated on how to take care of us. We need governments to bring us to the table, to bring their commitments into action. We want action now. We do not want it tomorrow, we want it now. We need to ensure that there are tougher laws that are brought on these perpetrators to ensure that they do not continue doing this to other women and children around the world. But we need young people to be at the decision tables. We need women at the decision tables. We need young people to sit on the panels, to talk about the things that matter to them, and to women to also stress what matters to them. We need intergenerational dialogues, which is very much important, from the highest level to grassroots. We need to be put into preference and priority to ensure that no other girl has to make a decision to leave home to go out onto the streets like I did because I was not economically empowered. And so today, I hope all of us here, representatives of governments, civil society, grassroots, let us make our commitments to ensure that we do not come back again to talk about survivors, victims of gender-based violence, early childhood marriage, and or female genital mutilation. We need to get to zero. And when you refer that to SDGs, it's just about 10 years to go. We need to achieve zero discussions about ending harmful practices, and we have to do it together. So thank you.
Mesdames et messieurs, prêtez-moi vos oreilles et confisquez mes mots du moment. Sans mourir d'ennui à leur entendement, mourrez plutôt de honte si vous admettez le mariage des enfants. Mais puisque je sais que vous ne faites pas dans le cynisme ni dans les consciences d'acier, recevez donc ici mes mots, seule arme valable en ces lieux en guise de plaidoyer. Chaque enfant qu'on enseigne est un homme qu'on gagne. Ce dicton a longtemps échappé aux pervers pédophiles friands d'adolescentes. Mais faisons une exégèse et pensons au revers poétique du vers. Chaque fille qu'on enseigne est une femme perdue. Chaque fille mariée de façon précoce est une âme pendue. Chaque fille violée dans un foyer illégal est un fruit d'Éden défendu et encore trop vite cueilli.
Victor Hugo disait qu'aux intelligents, peu de mots suffisaient. Il était même dit qu'aux humains, aucun tort devant la livrer à un vilain ça ne devrait être fait. Une fois encore, nous avons oublié le rôle qui est le nôtre, protéger chaque être humain, peu importe son sexe et son appartenance sociale.
Oubli, malheur du siècle, source de haine, non, hypocrisie, amour du moment, ou mieux encore, parole vaine. Trop longtemps, nous avons attendu la fin des basses promesses, mais nous sommes rassemblés ici au Kenya à la CPD pour accélérer les promesses. Je suis cette fille jetée trop tôt en partie à ce gigolo dépourvu de conscience. Je suis cet ado dont le doigt à peine s'élargit, mais qui déjà doit porter un bébé. Parce que pour mes parents, je suis une bouche de trop qu'il faut nourrir. Je suis d'emblée devenue bonne pour le foyer d'un homme, même si je risque de mourir. Culture ou pourriture, dans ma vie d'aujourd'hui, même si souris-tu. J'affranchis ma peine et je parle au nom de mon moi qui s'est tu. Tradition ou malédiction, l'ignorance au pays des merveilles fait son marché. Il paraît que c'est ainsi que faisaient nos ancêtres pour mettre les filles en sécurité. Il paraît même que l'amour n'a pas d'âge, mais qui va lentement, va sûrement. Et parce que je veux vivre longtemps, laissez-moi ménager ma monture. Je pourrais ensuite convier qui le désire, même et me respecte à la montée. La religion, perçue comme une boussole ancestrale, fait m'obliger à me marier avant l'âge. Ils oublient juste qu'Allah n'est pas obligé. Pourquoi m'y obliger, moi?
Bogou, 22,4%. Alibori, 37,2%. Telles sont les statistiques alarmantes dans le Nord Bénin. 15 millions de filles sont mariées chaque année dans le monde. Franchement, ce n'est pas malin. Que faire face à cette situation qui transcende les frontières?
À présent, c'est le temps de l'action. Il est temps que l'amour ait un âge bien défini. Écoutez la voix de ces âmes vivantes qui se meuvent par nos voix qui les portent pour que plus jamais les filles ne meurent, afin que plus jamais dans le Nord Bénin, une fille mariée ne soit une morte vivante. J'appelle donc à la rescousse les redresseurs de tort et l'ONU, afin qu'ensemble, nous mettions au Bénin et dans le monde entier les exploiteurs d'enfants à nu.
Il était dit qu'aux intelligents, peu de mots suffisaient.
Il était dit qu'aux humains, aucun tort devant les livrer à un vilain sort ne devrait être fait.
Une fois encore, nous avons oublié le rôle qui est le nôtre. Protéger chaque être humain, peu importe son sexe et son appartenance sociale. Alors, faites le devoir qui est le vôtre.
Okay, thank you very much for that intervention. Right now, we want to welcome Aya Chevy from the African Union Youth Envoy.
It's always great to come after young, not only young people, but young artists. Another round of applause to them, honestly. Honorable ministers, ambassadors, I'm not breaking down the stage. Her Highness, the Queen of Lesotho, Commissioner of Social Affairs of the African Union Commission, my mentor, Excellencies, young people. Young people, how many young people in the room? Many. We will not judge you. I see this part didn't raise any hands up. I come from a small village on the Tunisian-Algerian borders, and it has been common there to practice a ritual called tasfih, or the locker. At the age of 9, before getting my period, me and my cousins, female cousins, had to go through tasfih. So we were dragged into a room, an elder came, no explanation. She scratched my knee 7 times, made me eat 7 dry grapes with the blood of my knees. Repeat couple of words or sentences saying, he is a thread, I am a rock. The ritual says your vagina is locked and now protected. And you then have to do the same to unlock it before you get married. That was the start of a long-term trauma for me. The violation of our bodies might heal, the physical pain might heal, but the psychological trauma and the damage of our minds and violation of our right to choose to be, to become, very difficult to heal. There are many harmful practices like tasfih, but female genital mutilation is the ultimate form of gender-based violence. And that's why we're talking about it today. This is not just about FGM. This is about how patriarchy uses violence as a weapon to keep women trapped in inequality. As young women, how are we supposed, after going through the violation of our very existence as a female, to contribute to society, or the economy, or even run for office, to be in leadership, to innovate, to perceive our role in the world, when all we remember growing up is that we are powerless, we're a social property, we're a second-class citizen, and we should ascribe to social norms that control our sexuality, our social position, our economic power, and our political being. How can we? What is needed is more than just women empowerment. It's about women's liberation, to enjoy our childhood and our adulthood. We have some serious work to do as a humanity and as a collective human family, because we have some tragic numbers in 2019. We keep repeating those numbers, but I'm not sure if we realize the magnitude of it. 200 million girls already gone through FGM. 650 million already have been married in childhood. We are here at ICPD plus 25, and despite considerable progress since 1994, I find it quite ironic. In 21st century, we managed to innovate artificial intelligence, blockchain, futuristic machine, speak on the iCloud, but we fall or we fail to solve the most urgent fundamental issue, the protection and respect of human dignity, of girls' dignity. We need to start looking beyond protecting, but truly providing tools for our population as a whole in accordance with specific needs of each group to build the Africa we want, the world we want. We invite our heads of states and ministers gathered here who made great commitments to translate these commitments into action. Into action. We are tired of talking. We want action. To invest in holistic integrated care of victorious survivors, not just survivors, they are victorious. That's what I heard from an activist yesterday. That begins with families and communities to establish a legal framework that is conducive to the elimination of harmful practices. And as Commissioner of Social Affairs emphasized, this needs also the political will. Part of our work at the African Union is to engage youth in Agenda 2063 in accelerating the plan to end harmful practices. We have just announced today with the Department of Social Affairs a call for application for Salima Victorious Youth Ambassadors. And we're looking for youth activists from the 6 regions of Africa, including our diaspora, to be the voice, the powerful voice of Salima. And we also want to announce the winner of the logo that we launched an open call for, designed by young African designer, and he is a man. We talk a lot about men engaging in this issue. Mr. Izzat Emmanuel from Ethiopia, big round of applause to him. He won the competition for the logo of Ethiopia from 200 applications. Governments need to also look at youth-led initiatives, doing incredible work to end harmful practices, who already face many challenges. So let's not make bureaucracy and lack of resources and funding another burden to hinder their activism. Funding to end FGM and child marriage should not be a hustle for youth-led organizations. Donors should support Africa and youth-led initiatives. Collaborating with our member states and ministers and committed leaders should not be a hustle. Having speakers from government and ministers for youth meetings should not be a hustle. The hustle should be that we should end FGM and child marriage before 2020. The hustle should be to make sure that 50 million girls do not become victims of FGM before 2020. The hustle should be to stop 100 million girls to get into marriage before 2030. That is the hustle. That is where our energy, our advocacy should be spent. That is where we should be building our movement. We talk a lot about youth, investing in young people. So let's put our money where our mouth is, just like a panelist say, because youth are done with tokenism and are done with ticking boxes. We know that what we want, it's economic independence, it's ownership of our choices and our bodies, free and liberated from oppressive patriarchy, to be whatever the hell we want to be. Because we, as young women, we are powerful, we are equal, and we are badass. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aya, for that wonderful speech for us. Right now, we want to welcome to our stage to Dr. Natalia, the Executive Director of Unfpa, for her to share with us some words.
Thank you so much. Thanks, It's exciting to be here, and I would like to acknowledge all the work that many of you have put into getting us to a stage where we're talking about zero rather than making things better. It is our advocacy, once we galvanize our efforts and ramp up our advocacy even more, that will push leaders, ordinary people, families, to translate what we have here as political commitments into concrete actions that are going to make a big difference for women and girls all over the world. So I believe that a commitment to end harmful practices creates a ripple effect. It inspires people. It inspires progress. And it's not only about SDG 5 on gender equality, it's about all of the integrated 17 Sustainable Development Goals that focus on health and well-being, on safe motherhood, on equality, in fact, for everybody. And that inclusiveness may lead to economic prosperity, et cetera, but it's really fundamental human dignity. Hand in hand with governments here, we've seen civil society organizations, grassroots partners, traditional and religious leaders. I'm just coming from the chef traditionnel de Niger, who are here in their numbers, health personnel, teachers, survivors, activists. Together, we're declaring our intention to realize our goal, and again, it is 0 harmful practices. Today, on behalf of UNFPA, I stand with our champions who are sharing your inspiring stories. You are challenging us. We do want to join you as you fight to eliminate harmful practices across the world. I am very proud to add my voice as I make commitments of my own. And I commit to stand with Wen from China, a proud mother of 2 daughters. She became a role model in Liling village, using her voice to advocate for the value of women and girls in her community. I commit to stand with Margaret from Malawi. Margaret was forced to marry when she was 14 years old. She nearly died while giving birth. She lived with an obstetric fistula and the shame and stigma that incontinence can create for 13 years. But today, she stands proudly, and she's a powerful advocate based on her experience to put an end to child marriage in her community. And lastly, I commit to stand with 19-year-old Hasma. She goes every Tuesday to the market in her village in Ethiopia, and what she's doing there is calling for abandonment of female genital mutilation and for breaking taboos that reduce the dignity of women and girls. So these are my personal commitments. Within UNFPA, we are all making our own personal commitments because we know that if we stand and back with someone, if we allow them to articulate what it truly means to them to make a commitment real, that this will have a multiplier effect. So please think about how you can use your voice at your desk, in your family, in your faith community, to publicly declare the end, the 0, the better world that we're working for together. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you.
And now, for finishing our session, we would like to call up the stage to Margaret Mensa Williams, Chairperson of the National Council from Namibia, to share some words with us.
Thank you very much. I can only say, wow. I have been inspired. You guys, you made this room lit. See? We can also learn how to speak the slang. In Namibia, where I come from, the First Lady is having a project called Be Free, where she engages young people, where they speak for themselves. They go to clubs where the young people are going. They engage, they talk, she gives them the opportunity. They are in charge of the program, and they come up with programs that they would like to do. So I am so happy that the commitments that were made here, I was the chairperson. I have moved. You know, people like to move. After 21 years, I have to move to the National Assembly. I'm in elections, and it's on the 27th of this month. And my commitment is to take the 0 from Nairobi to Namibia. And I am going to ensure that the 9% or 11% of early childhood marriages is stopped. FGM or harmful traditional practices. We have also the issue of dry sex, and it is in Namibia. But the commitments that came from here today are commitments that say that the millions of children and women who are inflicted with this pain are 15 million too many. We have been told by these young people that there is nothing for them without them. They need to be at the table. So we have to commit as people of the world that we will end all harmful practices against children and against women the world over. I want to take this opportunity to thank all those who have made commitments, but I also would like to thank Unfpa for their worldwide awareness and program being carried out to sensitize the respective populations as to why FGM needs to be stopped. I especially would like to commend their work with UNICEF to ensure that the extreme form of discrimination against girls and women on every level is stopped, that social workers are urged to stand up for the vulnerable young people, girls, and on a one-on-one basis. I would like to commit that as an individual, I am going to speak with the youth and say, there is nothing for us without us. There is no harmful practices without our concern. We want zero, because my voice is my power and it's our healing. Let's heal the world. United we stand, divided we fall. I thank you.